and welcome. I'm Asuma Kataoka and you are watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. Israeli forces have begun withdrawing from parts of Gaza under a ceasefire and hostage exchange deals Phase 1 ratified by the Israeli cabinet. The truce has brokered with Hamas will take effect within 24 hours, with the release of hostages and some Palestinian prisoners expected within 72 hours. The United States will deploy 200 troops to support and monitor the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. Meanwhile, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has said that Turkey will join a task force to oversee the agreement signed in Egypt, while Israel has confirmed that prominent Palestinian prisoner Marwan Barghouti will not be part of the prisoner release deal. Russia has launched missile and drone attack on Kyiv today, plunging the Ukrainian capital into darkness, damaging critical infrastructure and wounding at least 9 people. According to Ukrainian officials, strikes have also killed a 7-year-old child in Zaporizhzhia and forced evacuations in the Donbas region. Sweden has announced a $367 million investment to boost its anti-drone defenses, including systems to down drones and deploy hunter drones. Amid rising aerial threats, the funding will also enhance JAS-39 Gripen fighter jets as Europe faces growing concerns over hybrid attacks. U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy has warned that air traffic controllers who repeatedly failed to report to work during the government shutdown could be fired. More than 3,300 flights were delayed on Thursday as the disruptions continued, prompting senators to urge airlines to issue refunds as government shutdown enters its 9th day. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has praised friendly and cooperative ties with China as he hosted Chinese Premier Li Qiang and other foreign dignitaries for the 80th anniversary of the Workers' Party. The celebrations, attended by Russia's Dmitry Medvedev, come as Pyongyang prepares a massive military parade. Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado has won the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize for her fight to restore democracy and defend human rights, according to the Norwegian Nobel Committee. The committee has said that Machado's recognition comes at a time when authoritarians seize power, highlighting her courageous resistance. A magnitude 7.4 earthquake has struck southern Philippines, killing at least 2 people in Mati City, Davao Oriental, and triggering tsunami warnings in the Philippines as well as Indonesia. According to local seismology authorities, they have issued evacuation orders for coastal residents as aftershocks continue to shake the region. Now we start with the Middle East. The Israeli army has said that a ceasefire in Gaza has officially come into effect at 9 a.m. GMT. The truce follows weeks of negotiations aimed at halting the fighting and allowing the release of hostages as part of the first phase of the peace plan. Meanwhile, Germany has announced a $34 million humanitarian aid package for Gaza, with Chancellor Friedrich Merz confirming immediate support as part of a wider reconstruction plan alongside Egypt. This move follows a recent ceasefire agreement aimed at ending the devastating conflict in Gaza. While Hamas has warned that the coming days will be a trust test of Israel's credibility in honoring the ceasefire terms. The agreement, brokered by Egypt, Qatar, Turkey, and the U.S., includes phased Israeli withdrawal, prisoner releases, and humanitarian aid delivery, marking a critical step towards peace. In a related development, the International Committee of the Red Cross has emphasized the urgent need for Gaza hostages to be handed over safely and with dignity. Now for this discussion, we're joined by Yossi Cooper-Wasser. He's an Israeli intelligence and security expert, joins us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you, Yossi, for joining us again. Yossi, what do you think about Germany being one of many first countries to say that they are going to be funding the Gaza's reconstruction?
Well, I think it's a little bit too early. This reconstruction is going to begin only after Hamas disarms and the forces that are going to rule Gaza while having this reconstruction are being established. We still wait for the Palestinian technocrats that are going to replace the Hamas in running Gaza, supported by the International Stabilization Force and by the interim international force that's going to be in charge of the transition. All of that is not yet in place, and it's going to take a while. And first and foremost, the problem is that Hamas refuses to disarm. And without Hamas disarmament, nothing is going to happen. So first of all, I would, instead of giving all kinds of incentive to Hamas and speaking about reconstruction before it is removed from power, we should ask all the international community to send a very clear message to Hamas that they have to disarm and stop carrying out terror attacks against Israel and stop harassing their own population. For the population to enjoy a better life, Hamas has to move down from power.
And how crucial is the role of other international partners in supporting the reconstruction and rebuilding trust between Israel and Gaza?
Look, reconstruction is a part of something wider. The wider plan speaks first and foremost about de-radicalization. For de-radicalization of Gaza, the first thing that has to happen, as I said, is that for Hamas to move down from where it is today as an armed force that governs Gaza. That's the first thing that has to happen, because the new relationships between Israelis and Gazans cannot happen before there's a stage of de-radicalization. We saw yesterday when the news about the agreement being signed came to Gaza, everybody went to the streets and they were chanting, "Let's kill the Jews." This is not very optimistic when you look at the future. There's a long process of de-radicalization that has to be taken simultaneously to reconstruction. But we cannot start the reconstruction before Hamas is out of power and before the de-radicalization process starts. Because otherwise we are going to just allow terrorists to live in better housing and enjoy better life. This is not the idea behind this plan. The plan is about de-radicalization of Gaza. This is the first line of the plan, de-radicalization of Gaza. And we saw yesterday that how long this road is going to be. It has to be simultaneously with some reconstruction, and we are not against it. But we cannot start reconstruction before Hamas is out of power and before there's a beginning of a radicalization.
And Yossi, when you say radicalization, so who do you think who can lead it or guide the people there for this?
Well, it's a combination of the international community and especially some Arab states that have already gone through a process of de-radicalization and moderation. We have a lot of Arab countries that are moving in this direction, fortunately. And they should lead because they can produce the textbooks and the education plans that would lead the Palestinians living in Gaza in this direction. Otherwise, we are just going to repeat the same mistakes of the past, where we reconstructed Gaza again and again and again, and again it fell into the hands of terrorists and that used this reconstruction in order to build tunnels and arms, instead of really improving the living conditions of the people of Gaza. We have to understand the people of Gaza, some of them have been brainwashed for so many years that the purpose of their existence is to kill the Jews. Before something can happen, we have to start, at least begin to move into a different direction. Otherwise, we are going to just end in the same place like we ended in 7th of October. There was reconstruction in 2021 after the last conflict between Israel and the Palestinian terrorists in 2021. There was reconstruction. What was this reconstruction good for? Building the Palestinian terror tunnels and weapons. That is what they used the reconstruction effort for. We shouldn't repeat the same mistakes.
Thank you very much, Yossi, for joining us and sharing that insight. Now we move on to our next news. Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado has won the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize. She's being recognized for her fight for democracy and peaceful transition in the nation. The Norwegian Nobel Committee has praised Machado's courage, saying she represents those who refuse to stay silent in the face of authoritarianism. The Nobel Peace Prize Committee Secretary has said that he has spoken to this year's laureate, Maria Corina Machado, who told him this is an award to an entire movement. A longtime critic of President Nicolas Maduro, Machado has reportedly faced harassment, persecution, and repeated threats. Forced into hiding, she has continued to coordinate opposition efforts inside of Venezuela. The 56-year-old former lawmaker was barred from running in last year's presidential elections, despite winning the opposition primary, a move condemned by the Western nations. The Nobel Committee said her choice to remain in Venezuela, despite grave risks, is inspiring millions seeking freedom and justice. Let's listen into what Jorgen Vatre Freidnes, chair of the Norwegian Nobel Committee, has said.
The Norwegian Nobel Committee has decided to award the Nobel Peace Prize for 2025 to Maria Corina Machado. She is receiving the Nobel Peace Prize for her tireless work promoting democratic rights for the people of Venezuela and for her struggle to achieve a just and peaceful transition from dictatorship to democracy.
Now for this discussion, we're joined by Ross Feingold. He's a political analyst, joins us live from Taipei. Thank you very much, Ross, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, looking at this news, how significant is Maria Corina Machado's Nobel Peace Prize win?
It's a recognition of somebody who's advocated for peaceful means to overthrow an authoritarian regime. There's many precedents for the Nobel Peace Prize to be awarded to people in similar circumstances, but of more immediate significance for the people of Venezuela and whether or not regime change is likely, I think that remains to be seen. It's going to take a greater effort by the international community to bring about regime change in Venezuela. There's been so much talk in recent days about what U.S. policy is going to be going forward and whether the U.S. will more actively intervene to bring about change in Venezuela. And of course, Venezuela has its supporters, most notably Russia and China. So this will bring more attention to the situation in Venezuela, but by itself, it's not going to change the situation.
And what impact could Machado's recognition have on, or what do you think about international support for her opposition party and efforts to challenge a current regime?
Frankly, international concern about the situation in Venezuela has existed for many years. It might grow. Again, that's really subject to what the Trump administration really plans to do and how much pressure the Trump administration plans to put on other countries to join any efforts that the U.S. Launches subsequently with regard to changing the regime in Venezuela. But again, Venezuela still has its international supporters. And clearly Maduro and his cronies are digging in for a fight. It doesn't appear that they're willing to give up power peacefully, at least not at the moment. So practically speaking, this might bring more attention to the situation in Venezuela, but by itself doesn't necessarily mean change is imminent.
And one more prominent figure who wanted this award is, of course, President Trump. Do you think that he will hold grudge, or do you think that going forward, the fact that him and Venezuela or U.S. and Venezuela relationship is currently soured, so do you think this can affect in their relationship?
The nominations for this year's Nobel Prize closed at the end of January, only days into President Trump's second term. So it was always very unrealistic that he would win the award for this year. But frankly, he's a legitimate candidate to win the award this year. He likes to talk about the number of conflicts that he's been involved in intermediating and bringing about ceasefires or peace agreements, and there's some truth to that. And we have the recent news with Gaza, and there's still the potential for President Trump to bring about the end to the war between Ukraine and Russia. So he'll definitely be a competitive candidate for next year's Nobel Peace Prize, no matter what he says in the coming days about the winner of this year's award. As far as what it means for his views towards Venezuela, again, I would say U.S. has been looking at this very closely in recent days. President Trump is clearly having discussions with his top foreign policy and national defense advisors about Venezuela. The fact that a Venezuelan has won the Nobel Peace Prize is probably irrelevant to President Trump's decision making.
Thank you, Ross, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next story as well. Now, U.S. Senate has passed the fiscal year 2026 National Defense Authorization Act by a vote of 77 to 20, authorizing $925 billion for defense initiatives. Key provisions include reforms to Pentagon budgeting, enhancing military readiness, and expanding free credit monitoring for service members, including reservists and National Guard members. The NDAA also includes provisions for the ICBM program and authorizes funding for military pay, construction projects, weapons developments, and geostrategic policy initiatives. This comes as U.S. President Donald Trump earlier said that the defense spending in 2026 to touch $1 trillion while addressing to the defense personnel. Additionally, it extends the U.S. assistance to Ukraine initiative through 2028, with funding increased to $500 million. Now for this discussion, we go back to Ross Feingold. He's a political analyst, joins us live from Taipei. Thank you very much, Ross, for staying with us. Now, with the Senate passing this NDAA for 2026, how do you assess the balance between defense spending and domestic priorities?
President Trump has consistently been a supporter of increases in defense spending, as have Republicans in the Senate and the House. So it's not a surprise that this is passed with support from the White House. And it's a lot of money, and President Trump has never taken the position that he wanted to reduce defense spending. He's always taken the opposite position. He likes to say peace through strength. That doesn't mean he's in favor of U.S. military interventions around the world, and he's been very clear in his opposition to that, notwithstanding that he joined with Israel to bomb Iran's nuclear facilities earlier this year. But generally speaking, Trump likes to say peace through strength and is a supporter of greater defense budgets, and this is consistent with that. And if that means that other types of social spending are not going to get as much money, I think the White House and Republicans in Congress are comfortable with that trade-off.
And do you think the fact that they've already mentioned support for Ukraine until 2028, given this growing funding for Ukraine, how might this influence U.S. foreign policy and its relationships with both Russia and Ukraine's allies in Europe?
President Trump's been very consistent on this issue. No matter what Congress says, he's not in favor of giving anything away to Ukraine, and he's made it very clear that if Europe wants to buy weapons from the United States and transfer those weapons to Ukraine, he's okay with that. So even if Congress includes funding for Ukraine, I think we'll see some pushback from the Trump administration as far as when it actually comes time to spend that money. And one thing the Trump administration has been very clear about since it took office in January is, notwithstanding if Congress appropriates money for something, if the White House doesn't want to spend that money, they're not going to, and they basically challenge Congress or anyone else to take action against the administration and try and force them into the spending. But the courts have generally agreed with the White House on this. So if Trump doesn't want to spend any money on Ukraine, he's not going to, no matter what is provided for in legislation. And if I may assume, I'll just quickly add that This bill also provides a lot of funding for initiatives in the Asia Pacific region, which I think, again, has a lot of support from the White House, Congress, as well as from countries in the region, whether that's Japan, South Korea, Australia, Taiwan. China, of course, will be unhappy, but the bill also reflects a U.S. commitment to this part of the world.
Thank you very much, Ross, for joining us and sharing that insight. Now we will move on to Europe. NATO will launch its annual nuclear exercise Steadfast Noon next week, as tensions with Russia have risen after a series of air incursions by Moscow, which Russia denies. As per reports, the exercise does not involve any real nuclear weapons and will involve around 70 aircrafts and 2,000 personnel from 13 member states. NATO's Secretary General Mark Rutte has said that the exercise helps ensure NATO's nuclear deterrent remains credible, safe and secure, as well as effective, adding it sends a clear signal to any potential adversary that the alliance can protect and defend all its members against any threat. Now we move on to India. India will reopen its embassy in Kabul, Afghanistan, which has been closed for 4 years ago after the Taliban took power in 2021. In a move to expand diplomatic ties with Afghanistan, Indian Foreign Minister Jaishankar has made the announcement during Taliban Foreign Minister Muttaqi's first visit to India since 2021. India had kept a small mission open to support trade, medical aid, and humanitarian help. Muttaqi's 6-day visit aims to boost ties and economic relations. With New Delhi, several countries have embassies in Kabul, but only Russia has formally recognized the Taliban government. This reopening shows India's continued support for Afghanistan despite political challenges. Let's listen in to both of the leaders.
Excellency, we have a common commitment towards growth and prosperity. However, these are endangered by the shared threat of cross-border terrorism that both our nations face. We must coordinate efforts to combat terrorism in all its forms and manifestations. We appreciate your sensitivity towards India's security concerns. Your solidarity with us in the aftermath of the Pahalgam terrorist attack was noteworthy.
لپیړیو راهیسې موجودې دي. دغه نزدېکت یوازې د جغرافیې نه دی بلکې دواړه لوري د سوداګرۍ، ترانزیت، سپورت او ګډ کلتور پر بنسټ هم سره تړلي پاتې شوي دي. په 1940
Now for this discussion, we're joined by retired Major General Dr. Rajan Kochhar. He's a senior strategic and defense expert, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Major General Doctor, for joining us. Good to see you. Now, what do you think motivated India to reopen its embassy in Kabul now after 4 years? And what do you think led India to make such a decision this time?
A very interesting question. Afghanistan has been a very important country as far as South Asia is concerned. And if you see the strategic location of Afghanistan, it is also known as a gateway to Central Asia. So everybody wants to have a foothold in Afghanistan today, because from Afghanistan, you have an outreach to the Central Asian Republic as well as Iran as well as Russia. So America also wants to come here. Bagram Airport has been trying to convince Afghanistan to hand over. Russian interests are also here. China is in a big way. China's 4 to 5 major projects are going on in Afghanistan right now. China is interested on CPEC also. So when we see the interest of so many players, I think India cannot be a mute spectator, because India, if you remember, has 400 unfinished projects going on in Afghanistan. In 2021, August, India had to shut down those projects. It had to close down its own embassy there. And almost 3 billion of dollars of Indian investment is right now stuck up in Afghanistan. So, uh, strategic reasons, geopolitical reasons, economic reasons, and it's very important to have that stake in Afghanistan today. So I think uh, it is not late, and I think it's the right time that India has gone into Afghanistan now. And this meeting of Mutaki here in New Delhi, along with Minister Jaishankar, is very, very monumental, I would say that, because it has come at a time when there are a lot of upheavals taking place on the Pakistan border, on the Afghanistan border, as well as American interest here in this region. So I think a very welcome development as far as India is concerned. And what happens now is that moment our uh, technical department there gets you upgraded to an embassy, that means that we'll have a direct access to the Afghanistan leadership now. And uh, Minister Jaishankar has already outlined that apart from the maintenance and repair of those existing projects, if you remember the Zarang Dalaram highway, 218 kilometers has been built by India. Reconstruction of the Indira Gandhi Institute of Child Health in Kabul has been India's contribution. And the Parliament of Afghanistan, including the Salma Dam. So, what India is now trying to re-establish its role, what it had prior to 2021 is uh, an outreach has been made that we can be a part of the water resources project, the education and the exchange of students coming into India. Uh, uh, Restrictions on visa have been removed. A new visa model has been created for Afghanistan, and most importantly, we want to limit the role of Pakistan in this region, because if you remember, terrorism is one area which is also on the table in these talks, and this counter terrorism is extremely important to us, because most of these terrorists or the weapons which were seen in Jammu and Kashmir when the terrorists had infiltrated have come from Afghanistan. So that is India's most major concern, and we'll be able to rein in these forces of terrorism on Afghanistan soil. And that is why, in a statement, Minister Jaishankar has highlighted that we want cooperation with Afghanistan as far as the terrorist or the terrorism activities are concerned, because these are the security concerns of India. So I think if you look at the entire package, I think it's a very, very positive development, especially when there is so much of churning there in the Indian subcontinent and on our borders today.
And Dr. Rajan Kochar, Major General, how do you think now that only Russia has formally recognized the Taliban government, how do you see India's decision to keep engaging with Kabul? Does it impact, or does this have any impact on India's relationship with US or other countries?
See, a point of clarification I would like to add here, that we have not recognized Taliban's new government as such. We have only upgraded our establishment there to a full-fledged embassy. Russia is the only country which so far has recognized Taliban, and we haven't done it so far. So I think India is going one step at a time. And I don't think India will get into this act of recognizing Afghanistan straight away, because it will have to take the cue from the other countries, especially the United States. So I feel that this relations between India and the United States and with relation to Afghanistan, will US feel good or bad? I think we have a policy of strategic autonomy. We really don't consider these aspects when we frame our foreign policy, because we see a foreign policy of a particular country as a policy which is bilateral between the two countries. It has got nothing to do with Russia, it has got nothing to do with China, it's got nothing to do with the US. So I think from that context of a framework of our foreign policy, it's not going to make any difference to India. It's not going to make much of a difference to the United States also. And if you remember, yesterday India had made a strong statement that India does not agree to establish any foreign air bases in Afghanistan. And I think Pakistan also made a similar statement, and China also made a similar statement. So India is very, very clear that we don't want any foreign interference in our borders, and that is why this statement of Afghanistan was made. So I don't, to sum it up, I would like to say that it's not going to make much of a difference as far as the United States relations with India is concerned, because we have a different kind of a relationship with the US. We now want to establish a full-fledged relationship with Afghanistan, because if you remember, or I'll just highlight one important aspect here. Foreign Minister Mutaki, he made a statement today that we would like to invite India to carry out mining projects in Afghanistan. So if you remember, China is already there. So now Afghanistan has made a very important outreach to India, that it has invited India also to join into the mining projects, which External Affairs Minister Jaishankar has said that the teams would look into the feasibility of such projects. So I think it's a very strong statement being made today, and it cements this Afghanistan and India relations for the future.
Yes, with that I would like to thank Dr. Major General Rajan Kochhar for joining us and sharing that insight throughout this topic. Now we move on. Peru's lawmakers swore in Congress Chief Jose Jerry as the country's new president less than an hour after unanimously voting to remove President Dina Boluarte, as anger mounted over rising crime and accusations of corruption. Shortly after Congress voted to remove her, Boluarte made an address at the presidential palace, where she acknowledged that the same Congress that had sworn her in late 2022 had now voted her removal, with the implications this has for the stability of democracy in her country. Let's listen into what Dina Boluarte has said.
Hoy, 10 de octubre del 2025, después de 2 años, 10 meses y 3 días, me presento ante ustedes como la mujer que aquel 7 de diciembre del 2022, con valentía y amor por mi patria, asumí el mandato constitucional como presidenta de la República. Recibí con honor la banda presidencial por el Congreso de la República. El mismo Congreso que el día de hoy aprobó la vacancia presidencial, con las implicancias que esto tiene para la estabilidad de la democracia en nuestro país. En todo momento invoqué a la unidad, a trabajar juntos, a luchar por nuestro país. Ante este contexto, no he pensado en mí, sino en los más de 34 millones de peruanos y peruanas que merecemos un crecimiento con estabilidad democrática y con un gobierno que trabaje sin corrupción, como lo hemos venido haciendo durante mi gobierno.
Lawmakers from across the political spectrum had late on Thursday summoned Boluarte to defend herself before Congress that same night. She never arrived, and lawmakers had sufficient votes to proceed with a rapid impeachment process. This is all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world.